Soma! Is it worth a buy? Let's read the words of the developer. From the creators of Amnesia: The Dark Descent comes Soma, or Soma, whatever you want to call it. A sci-fi horror game set below the waves of the Atlantic Ocean. Struggle to survive a hostile world that will make you question your very existence. So what is Soma? I'm going to call it Soma. It could be called Soma, but I'm going to call it Soma because that's what I'm calling it, alright? So Soma, well, I'll tell you what it isn't. It isn't what it's advertised to be. You see, this is a very difficult game for me to accurately review because I'm going to read the description again, parts of it. I mean, it says here, from the creators of Amnesia: The Dark Descent. So they want people to know that they're the people that created this. Comes Soma, a sci-fi horror game. So they're classing this as a horror game in a science fiction setting. Now, The Dark Descent was a horror game, but it was in a like an old Victorian days setting kind of thing, you know. So they've said it's a horror game. They've said it's by the people who made The Dark Descent. So essentially what they're saying is, hey guys, we've made another game. The people who brought you that amazing Amnesia, well, here we are again. And so people are buying the game on the premise that they're going to get Amnesia again. They're going to get as good an Amnesia because, let's be honest, this is $22.99. It's not a cheap game. It's not a low budget jump scare game that Steam's full of. You know, these piles of shit that people don't know what they're doing but think, hey look, we'll put a scary face on the screen and that's a horror game. You know, Amnesia was never about that. Amnesia was about dread and atmosphere in the same way that Outlast was about dread and atmosphere. But Soma doesn't project that same dread and atmosphere. The way I would have described Soma, if I was being honest and I was doing the write-up for this, I mean, I haven't, obviously I'd think of better words, but I'd go something along the lines of, from the creators of Amnesia: The Dark Descent, Soma is a sci-fi game with an adventure story with horror elements. I'd say something along the lines of that because this game, in my book, is not really a horror game. There's not much really horror in there. One of the things that made Amnesia was the dread atmosphere that I've already mentioned. You didn't see the monster that often. There were sections of the game where you had to get through, as there was in Outlast, where you had to get past some kind of patrolling monster. And if it saw you, and it could see you from a good distance away, it was on you. In Soma, you'd be amazed at how close you can actually go to these things before they come for you. One of the monsters, if you look at it, it comes at you. That one was particularly scary. It's one of the first ones you meet. The others resemble a turd on legs. They're kind of blind as bats, but when they do see you they can move quite quick. But they became more of a frustrating annoyance than a kind of, oh my goodness, here comes another monster. The first 2 hours of the game scared me because I'm a scaredy cat. The third and fourth hours of the game scared me because I was meeting new monsters. The fourth and fifth and sixth and seventh hours of the game didn't scare me one little bit. I'd become immune to this endless procession of monsters that were patrolling around the place, and I was hide and seek, and I didn't feel a sense of dread. All the noises that come on, there's far too many loud bangs and cracks and creaks that's going on. They've overdone it. The masters of horror have fucked up and overdone it. It's too much. They've tried too hard to make this game scary, and with Amnesia, you know, they didn't do that. They didn't need to because the setting itself did that for you. It's like Outlast. You know, Outlast, they didn't try too hard because they must have thought this game doesn't need much more. It's already scary as shit. You know, you can overdo it, you can put too many ingredients in and spoil the dish, and I believe that's what's happened with the horror in Soma. They've tried too hard to make it scary, and I think they've fucked up with the setting. I mean, I'm not saying it's a bad game, it just isn't a bad game. it has a very interesting story. It has a... I'm not going to spoil it for you, but what the story is about is you go for a brain scan in present day times. You come round, you black out, you come to in this sci-fi world set a long time in the future. There's no humans knocking around, it's just machines, and the machines actually think they're human at first. And it's kind of weird because you don't know what's going on. Then you realise that what's happened is there's been a massive calamity happened with this asteroid that's hit Earth, and people have moved to the Ark, and to get on the Ark you get a brain scan. You get scanned, and a copy of your brain is uploaded into the Ark, into a machine. Now the machine then takes over you. You're kind of living in proxy then, you see, because you've got yourself, who you were, the human you, and then there's the machine, which is now you, because all your thoughts from that machine are in that machine, but they're still with you as the human person as well. So like I say, there's two of you, an identical copy. So what the people were doing was actually killing themselves after they'd been scanned so that they could live on in this Ark. But it isn't actually them living on, they're still in the human, but they're in the machine as well. Can you see how crazy it is? And people in this future don't really value life as we value it now. It was kind of like, yeah, I'm happy to kill myself knowing that I'm actually safe, consciously living in this Ark. And you are discovering this, and you discover who you really are, which is, it's all very predictable, unfortunately. I was kind of going through the game calling it all out. You can tell when there's going to be an accident. You can tell when something's just not going to work. You can tell when there's going to be a monster moment. You can tell elements of the story when you kind of think, all right, yeah, so am I human or am I a robot? You know, you can kind of tell where you are. Then other things happen in the game, which I'm not going to spoil, but you end up having to make a lot of moral decisions in this game. And I didn't once feel that I was making moral decisions. I couldn't get into the story because I could see where the story was going. I never really felt attached to the story. It was kind of like watching a film that you don't really like. That's how I felt in the game. And it went along the lines of, there's a puzzle. The puzzle's going to be guarded by a monster 9 times out of 10. So to get the solution to the puzzle, you have got to work out the puzzle and work out a way past the monster. Now, as you can't fight in this game, you have to outsmart them, which generally means play hide and seek with them. For example, there's a part where you have to restart a router, and the router's in the basement, and hey, there's a walking turd in the basement. And so you have to get past this walking turd monster who makes very loud footsteps and reboot the router. Now, yeah, it's quite unnerving, but it's more frustrating. There's things where you have to get in I'll not be specific because I don't want to ruin the puzzles, but there's things that if you don't plug them in, they don't work, so you've got to check everything for cables. There is one really fucking annoying puzzle that is just padding, where you have got to set up a simulation using little things like a light source, a setting, a person. You've got to have surroundings and all that. So you're on this computer selecting what you were going to use to run the simulation, and you have to have it complete. So you have to cover everything. You've got to have the light, you've got to have the background, you've got to have the setting, you've got to have the person and all the rest of it. But each element you put in uses up memory, and you have to put certain elements in or it won't work. But you run out of memory because the computer can't hold as much memory. So you kind of like, it's hit and miss what you can put in, and you just kind of sit there pressing for ages until you get them in. There's other stuff where you have to line up a dish and a radio, and there's bits where you have to redirect electricity, and they're kind of like puzzles for noobs. They're very simplistic puzzles, but they felt more like padding than anything else. It was kind of like, we need to hold them up a bit here to spread out the game a bit. I mean, to be honest, right, I've played this for 7.5 hours. I've listened to stories, I've walked miles, I've listened to audio recordings, I've read hundreds of emails and letters and looked at photographs and little post-it notes, read loads of information on storage things, on manifest, oh goodness, you name it. There's so much information to read to get to grips with the story that if you cut that out and you were just literally running through the story, I could probably get where I am now in 2 hours, maybe even less. It's annoying because I kind of can't get into it, and there's a lot of people getting into this and think it's one of the best things. I've heard it even being called a masterpiece, and I'm like thinking, where's the masterpiece in this? I can't, you know, I just don't get it. I think if this game had been advertised as more of a story-based adventure, then I would be well into it, because I came into this expecting Amnesia: The Dark Descent, and I got just a big walking simulator with horror elements and a long deep story. And I'm not gonna lie to you, it is fun uncovering the story and finding out how these people died. You see the personalities of the people, and it is fun uncovering all that, and especially the person that you kind of talk to a lot. You kind of start questioning her as well, because you kind of think, hang on a minute, you sound like it sounds like I'm in a freaking experiment here. You know, it's a deep story, and I'm going to end on that, because if I was giving this a score, I'd be throwing around a 7. Maybe it's a 6.5 or a 7. Probably about a 7 out of 10, but I don't do scores. So what I'm going to do, if you are coming here like I was, because you've read the description and you want a Amnesia Outlast kind of horror game, it's not worth a buy for £22. Grab it when it's 50% off. It's not worth £22 as a horror game. It really isn't. So I'm giving it a thumb down. If you are looking for a science fiction adventure game that has a deep story where you get little bits of it and have to kind of dig deep, search everywhere, open up the drawers, read every scrap of piece of paper you find, look at every photograph, look into computers, dig deep into the computers, look at logs, look at emails, just really play detective, even though it's on rails and you kind of, you know, you're going to find the stuff anyway, and want quite a strange story. If you are after that kind of experience with a bit of horror thrown in for good measure, and don't mind some annoying padding and playing hide and seek with monsters that look like walking turds, it's worth a buy. Even at £22, it's worth a buy, because it is very well put together. It really is. If you're into this kind of setting, the underwater sci-fi in the future setting. So I'm going to leave it there. It's up to you as the consumer to decide what you want from this game, but I think I've set it out quite nicely so you know what to expect.